everyone, it's Fursuit here with another video, and I just wore these nail gloves. Poor Vesper, she really doesn't have any paws now. So, today I'm here with another book review, and today I'm going to be reviewing Horrorstör by Grady Hendrix. Oh gosh, this looks a little weird, doesn't it? So, I actually saw this book getting talked about on TikTok a while back, and I thought it looked pretty interesting, but it was kind of out of sight, out of mind, until I went to a bookstore on my birthday. After eating dinner with my family, we went to a bookstore, and I saw it, and I was like, hey, I remember seeing that book get talked about. So I went ahead and got it. Horrorstör is a horror story that's along the lines of classic haunted house tales, where a bunch of employees that work at this kind of off-brand IKEA stay after hours because some strange happenings have been going on, and the manager is wanting to get down to the bottom of it, so he gets a couple of his employees together to stay after hours to try and see what's going on, and then scary stuff ensues. And a pretty neat thing about this book that I really like is that the book itself is designed to look like a sort of IKEA catalog. It's kind of like this big book, even though when you open it and look, the story is just kind of on the edge of the page and doesn't go all the way, which I actually like that because it makes it a more quick read. The other thing I really enjoy is like the chapter pages. So each chapter is named after a piece of furniture in the store, and then it'll show you a picture of it. And while it starts out as like normal furnitures like wardrobes and tables, it eventually becomes creepier as the story goes on. So that being said, my time reading this book was a bit of a roller coaster because, you know, I couldn't decide whether I liked it or not, but that's just my own personal opinion. Just because starting off, you kind of gotta work your way to get absorbed into the story. Because I didn't know what to expect, and it's kind of got a strange sense of humor vibe to it, and I just didn't know how to handle it at first, and I just wasn't sure what to think of it at first. But the further I went along, the more I got absorbed into the story, the more I cared about some of the characters. Some of the other characters I didn't really care about, but that's on par. I'd say this is very much like, if you want to compare it to like a horror movie, it's very much like a B-rated horror movie. I didn't personally find it scary because it relied a bit too much on gore and viscera for their scares, and I'm more of an atmospheric person because reading about that kind of stuff doesn't really scare me as an author as well. And one of the parts was a little gross. There is a seance and it involves nastiness. I don't like that. If this was a horror movie, I would have turned it off. I actually tried watching Drag Me to Hell once, and that movie was so gross, I could not get through it. And I'm usually really good at horror movies, but I can't do grossness. But it was a brief scene, and since it is a book, it's fine. And of course, that's just a personal preference as well. And also the characters, they did grow on me, but at first it was a little kind of rough, because at first they didn't necessarily seem like real people. They have a very, like, Parks and Rec vibe, if you've ever seen that show. But eventually they did grow on me, and I really did enjoy some of them. And I was trying to think of, like, what the vibe of the story reminded me of. And then it's kind of like 13 Ghosts. I mean, not exactly. Like, if you read this and then watched the movie, they're, like, nothing the same. But I got a similar vibe, and that is my favorite horror movie. So I started enjoying this a lot more when that vibe kind of kicked in. And the climax of the story was really good, and I couldn't put the book down when that happened. So overall, it was a pretty fun read. I would actually recommend it if you like horror stories and want just a more fun read, and you don't want to put a lot of like time into reading a book, because honestly, like, with how the pages are and everything, and it's written really well and like easy to read. So if you just kind of want to sit down and read a book, maybe over the course of a couple days, and honestly, like, if you're really determined, you could probably read it in a single day, I would highly recommend it. I enjoyed it, despite, like, the hang-ups I had. Oh, and another hang-up I had, it was more so in the beginning, but there was a lot of, like, product placement. They talked about too many, like, actual brands. They brought attention to the fact that it was like an off-brand IKEA. That's fine, but then they kept mentioning things like Starbucks and TV channels like A&E and like actual like ghost hunting shows. And every time I saw it, it would take me out. Just because I personally don't like when books mention like real world things like that, because also it like kind of dates your book. However, luckily, the further along the story went, the less it mentioned those things, and it was really only in the beginning, so I got over that. So yeah, if you're into horror stories, I do recommend this. It's a neat little book. It's a nice thing to read when you're bored and just want just kind of a classic horror story. This was just a quick book review. If you've read this book, let me know in the comments, I suppose. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!